Omicron, 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 a word you're going to need to get very familiar with if you have a cruise planned in the next few months. We'll give you the scoop on what's going down with the new variant as it relates to cruising and travel. Plus, there's cruise restart news down in Florida. All this coming up on Midships. Hey, welcome to the Midships YouTube channel. I'm your Captain Corey. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel today. Well, the Thanksgiving holiday is now firmly in the rearview mirror. I hope that each and every one of you had some time to sit down and reflect and enjoy all the good things going on in each of your lives. And hopefully more than a few of you got to take advantage of some of those Black Friday cruise deals. I know I saw some fantastic pricing and a few cruises tempted me a little bit more, probably than I should have been allowed to be. Now we're going to be talking about some pretty serious cruise news in today's episode when we start covering the Omicron variant of COVID-19, but we're going to start on a little bit lighter note, and that's going to be a look back at what went down in New York City on Thanksgiving morning. And this article is from cruiseindustrynews.com. Disney Cruise Line's float debuts at Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Disney Cruise Line's ship float, named Magic Meets the Sea, has debuted in New York City as part of the 95th Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The float was inspired by the Disney Wish, which will set sail in summer of 2022. And I'm not sure if you got to watch it live, but when the float stopped in the main square of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, a very familiar sound was played. And most cruisers will recognize a Disney cruise ship immediately by the sound of their horn. Now let's keep the good news rolling with a cruise restart update coming out from Southern Florida. From cruiseindustrynews.com, Caribbean Princess welcomes guests back aboard. The Caribbean Princess has welcomed guests back on board in Fort Lauderdale for a cruise to the Eastern Caribbean, marking the return to service for the next Princess cruise ship. The ship is sailing on round-trip voyages from Port Everglades out of Fort Lauderdale. So you all know how excited I am to bring you cruise restart news as often as possible, and there's even better news as we're hitting a milestone in the cruise restart out of the United States. Let's learn a little bit more from Tanner Calise of Cruzely.com. Oh, and this is also where the episode starts to focus on the Omicron variant, so you're not going to want to miss the next couple of stories. Cruising marks a 100-ship milestone in the US, but will Omicron hurt the return? There's no arguing that cruising isn't quite back to what it was before the pandemic. However, it's clear that the industry is making major headway as it returns to cruising. Case in point, according to CDC data, there are now 100 cruise ships either sailing or preparing to sail from the United States. This data comes from the CDC's Cruise Ship Color Status Monitor, which is something that I've shown you on this channel before. Now, if you haven't seen it yourself, I'll go ahead and put a link to it down in the description below. This is to the color chart that Tanner Calise keeps updated about every 2 to 5 days on Cruzely.com. I feel like it's one of the easiest ways to go ahead and see where your cruise ship status is in the color chart. Now, also while you're down there in the description below this video, why don't you look at the very top of the box? There are some Amazon affiliate links to some cruise swag products that I use on every single one of my cruises. Things like magnetic wall hooks, over-the-door organizers, or a passport holder with a COVID card insert. Now, even just clicking on the link does help support the channel just a little bit, so we'd really appreciate you checking things out down there. Each day, cruise ships currently sailing with passengers and visiting a US port, or that plan to do so in the near future, submit health data to the CDC for monitoring. The number of ships tracked has grown steadily over the past few months. As of early August, there were about 65 ships tracked, but by November 22nd, that number has reached 100, and today it sits at 101. Considering that this time last year, no ships were sailing out of the US, and it wasn't even sure when they would sail again, this marks significant progress in the return to sailing. But will that progress slow due to a new threat coming out of South Africa? As mentioned earlier, cruising has been methodical in their return to service. Lines have started back with reduced capacities, while also regularly adding new vessels. But now there's another obstacle to potentially deal with. A new variant, dubbed Omicron, has suddenly made headlines around the world. Seemingly overnight, news has spread with worries about its potential impact on public health. Some headlines have called it the worst ever variant, while others questioned if it could make vaccines less effective or lead to worse outcomes for those who get sick. Stocks fell on Friday with news of the variant, and some cruising stocks fell over 10%. Countries, including the United States and United Kingdom, quickly put in place travel bans from countries where the variant has been widely found. While there have been other worries about variants in the past, including Delta, the action surrounding Omicron has seemingly been the most sudden and far-reaching since the beginning of the pandemic. And a lot of you will recall earlier on in the pandemic when travel bans were first put in place, a lot of questions were initially raised. But now, as we've gone through the Delta variant and now onto Omicron, you can see that people are questioning less and less the initial snap of a travel ban. At this point, it's too early to tell what will happen to cruises with regards to the Omicron variant. However, there is plenty of conjecture to go around, but there's little hard evidence about the variant itself. This includes if the vaccines are still effective against it, or how transmissible it is between people, and if cases are more or less severe than with other variants. That also means there's no word yet on how cruise lines will react to the news, if at all, for now. But with cases of the new variant being found in more and more countries, there is concern that it's already begun to spread too wide to control. And with countries putting in place travel restrictions, there is a chance that cruises could be impacted. Whether it will be something simple like having to adjust schedules and ports of call, or having to implement different protocols on your ship or in port. To be clear, at this point, there have been no major changes. And when it comes to news about COVID and variants, I like to source my information from multiple places. So we're going to go ahead and take it back to a cruise-focused article now coming out of cruisecritic.com about some potential impacts of the Omicron variant on cruising. In an article by Aaron Saunders, new Omicron variant affects international travel and cruises in Africa. On Friday, the WHO identified and named a new variant of COVID-19, originally discovered in and reported by authorities from South Africa, one that is already having some severe repercussions on the global travel industry. The new strain, dubbed Omicron, is reportedly more transmissible than the Delta variant of COVID, and that caused no small amount of concern for cruisers and travelers over the summer of 2021. First reported back on November 24th and detected originally November 9th, Omicron, otherwise known as B11529, has a significant number of mutations over previous novel coronavirus strains. According to the WHO, cases in South Africa have peaked rapidly in successive days, particularly in the areas surrounding Johannesburg. According to WHO, preliminary evidence suggests an increased risk of reinfection with this variant. 2 travelers in quarantine in a hotel in Hong Kong tested positive for the virus, despite being fully vaccinated and in separate rooms across the hall from each other. As of this Friday, Omicron was detected in a Belgian resident who has no known links to South Africa. So will this variant affect your cruise? The impact to cruising is still being determined, though it seems highly likely that cruises bound for South African countries will be fully canceled or rerouted entirely. Clearly, those travelers who have been to one of the countries in question over the recent weeks may find themselves completely out of luck in the short term due to increasing travel bans. Unlike the emergence of the Delta strain over the summer, numerous countries have already locked down air travel from South Africa and surrounding countries. Now, there's a lot of questions about this new variant, but in the interim, cruise lines will likely continue to rely on their core health and safety policies, the vast majority of which far exceed the restrictions put upon most of the world's airlines, hotels, and resorts. So the new Omicron strain can be picked up by a particular type of PCR test, according to a Euronews article. It's not clear if antigen testing can detect the virus at this time, or if the vaccines are effective or how effective they are against it. So now let's cover some things that you can do if you're concerned about this new variant and you currently have a cruise on the books. So if you're concerned about this new variant, here's what you should do. For now, unless you've recently been to one of the countries in question, the best advice is to sit tight. More will be known about the new variant in the coming weeks, and cruise lines will communicate any new health and safety protocols protocols to passengers and crew as soon as possible in advance of your sailing. Passengers booked on sailings to South Africa should immediately contact their cruise line for further guidance. But understand this issue is emerging and ongoing. Any cancellations or itinerary changes may still be days or weeks in the works. For now, however, it's clear that the cruise industry's proven regimen of testing, proof of vaccination, masking on board, as well as social distancing aren't going away anytime soon. And in previous Midships episodes, I had predicted that sometime early 2022, you might see cruise lines start to remove some of the things going on board their ships, whether it's the social distancing or some of the masking policies getting loosened on board the ships. I think as a result of this Omicron variant, that prediction may have to be pushed out further into the summer. If you made it this far into today's episode, why haven't you subscribed to the channel yet? I put out new videos almost every single day about cruise information just like this that you have to know for your next cruise. While you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and until next time, we'll see you on the Midships.
La 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 la.